it's on today.
Call this meeting to order, 3:33, Succoty County Recreation Task Force meeting on February the 20th. Appreciate everybody being here. Let me get my,
Yeah, he's on.
list up here. Apologize, running from one meeting to another, and I know we got other people the same way, so we're gonna move through this pretty quick. Just when you think you're good at,
Don't start thinking high yourself.
I'm not thinking high myself, I'm trying to.
Break you down.
You on the agenda?
Yeah, that's what I want. Look at there, see, that's what we got, good members out here, so, that's the, January 16th meetings, everybody got those out there? Is there any changes or anything that needs to be on there? I didn't see any. Get a motion to approve. Rick Lacy, get a second.
Second.
John Galbraith on a second. All in favor? Aye. All right, any opposed? All right. The priorities that we talked about was the consideration of funding out-of-city recreation participants. We'll touch on that real quick. One of the things that I've worked on through our budget to try to see where we are at, you know, with this being a new program that we're trying to accomplish through Oconee County, obviously, the biggest thing, if we are able to budget any funding, is to show the positive things that are going to be occurring in our recreation. So that's the point. Somebody asked me, well, after you get the funding, are you going to continue to have meetings? And I said, of course, because part of this is to show with this funding opportunity what we are going to go. If there is a need for increased funding and everything like that, or is the funding properly? Obviously, as we continue to grow recreation in Oconee County, and show what this funding can do and what it does for not only each of the cities, but also the kids involved in it, as well as the parents that attend these events, which is another thing that, you know, we're continuing to strive to work on our parents' behavior at these events. This will change not only the city, but the county as well. And so what I had looked at is, you know, instead of looking at just out of city, if you had a per participant cost on there across the board, no matter in city, out of city, because everybody's, what I don't like about just the out of city is you're starting to, you know, profile one from the other. A participant is a participant. They all pay county. Yes, they pay city, but at the same time, sometimes we're all a participant. So I think, in my personal opinion, it's easier to fund per participant rather than in city, out of city. As a city, it's your choice on how you do your taxation, whether it's whatever that level is. So to me, I feel like the funding of participant level is the best way to go about this across the board. So as you see fit in the city, as this works in your budget, we go from there. So if your city is, total participants is 800, then whatever our basis of funding would be, it would be divided among all participants. So let's say in the county is, we estimate it to be a total of about 3,000 individuals that participate in recreation. So whatever that funding level would be, let's say it's $500,000, it would be divided among all the participants. So each recreation group would submit an audit stating whatever that would be. Every person in there, whatever it would be, it doesn't have to be names or anything like that. Every year you would submit and say, hey, we've got 92, we've got 845. That way, as what the hope would be, this would be a set millage through the county. So as obviously the hope is the millage goes up. I know all of us through the cities and counties, you know, you hope and pray that your tax values continue to increase, thus the millage would increase. And the division of this would go among whatever the participant number is. So as we move forward with this, we obviously may see a rise in whatever the number is. Let's say if it's 3,100 from an audit or something that we get back from each of the cities. Westminster may say, okay, we want to open up another sport. Seneca may say, we want to open up 2 sports, whatever. As you see fit, that could increase your numbers, okay? But we also have to remember that our goal here is to form the best recreation we can in Oconee County, period, together and everything like that. So, do I see, if we're sitting at 3,000, do I see us going to 4,000 kids in recreation? I really don't. Do I see 3,000 kids getting the best recreation offerings that they can get in Oconee County for the first time? The answer to that question is yes. What I would propose is that, to look at and say, okay, we need, at least a meal to start a program like this, and that would be around $548,000 is what the county's meal is. What I would propose to my council is to start with at least a half meal in the current budget. I do believe that there's a possibility of us getting at least a half meal this year. Based on something like that, would be $274,000 into the program. If you divide that among 3,000 participants, it'd be about $92 per participant. What my suggestion would be is our goal would be at least a meal. We would start with a meal this year to show what the program's doing, the impact it is in the cities, and ask for a half meal next year for a total of a meal in our budget. And then I'll start, remember to, state your name before you and kind of keep it in an orderly fashion. So I'll open up the floor for any kind of comments on this. Again, remember, this is not in any way, shape, or form going to fix everything. However, I believe it's a good start in headed in the right direction in this county.
I think I'm Terry Swain, I think as we move forward in increasing our numbers, I hope that, I'm sure this will definitely help us because we definitely need a director and some funding coming in also.
Brian Ramey, I appreciate what the county's trying to do, I really do. But I'm looking at this more on an eye-opening basis. We've got the numbers right here. Our per participant cost is $280 per participant. And what that means is it's costing my city taxpayers $192,000 to provide recreation services to kids whose parents pay county taxes. They don't pay city taxes. We all know hospitality tax is very minute in what we bring into the town, but for years, we've been doing this. We've been paying out over $200,000 to provide a service to county taxpayers. And I think the county should own up to that and level that field so that we can provide something for elderly people. Now that this has all come about and been in the papers and people are discussing it, my senior population's jumping up and down because they're saying we're spending $200,000 for recreation for kids who don't pay taxes here, and y'all won't do anything for us. We can't. I mean, we've been robbing our utility fund for years just to maintain this. So I was hoping that we would look at the actual cost. If it's county taxpayers, what are they costing, and let the county pay for that. I mean, we need whatever we can get, but we're not gonna see any improvement in my town until that's brought up, because we're robbing the utility fund to do it.
What's your number of participants, total number of participants?
958 last year total, 687 was from the county.
$91,000 would not improve recreation in Westminster.
Not really. We're having to rob our utility fund now to do it. Last year we stopped it, so we cut back on some sports. We lost volleyball. We lost a lot of the baseball. Herb can tell you exactly what we lost. What we have now are people demanding that we repair our utility system. So we've got to keep that money in our utilities now. We've been taking out for recreation. So now I'm at a point to where If I go back to them this year and say, well, we're gonna have to take more from the utility fund instead of repairing the utility system to provide this service, we got this uproar from the senior population, look, we want a senior center, we want recreation for us, but yet we're paying it all, $200,000 of it, for county. And I don't know what else to tell them, I mean, how do you justify that? How do we justify providing, we want to, we've been doing it for years, but we've done it at the expense of the taxpayers of Westminster. That ain't what you want to hear, I know, but that's where we're at. That's how big an issue it is for us.
Oh, I agree, you know, but at the same time, you know, it's not what you want, it's baby steps to get to where you can go. And, I mean, from a standpoint of where I sit, you know, before I came on here, I'm sitting here going, there's not a care in the world for any kid in this county. There was nothing, because, you know, I look at it to show I know what we can prove by taking this funding. But for me to sit in there and ask my council to give a meal for a program, or in the case, a meal doesn't even cover what you're asking, because a meal's $548,000, and a meal doesn't even cover that either. You know, to me, I'm gonna have to prove what this funding does. Not just for there, but for all of my citizens that are not in Westminster, and I know what it means to the cities. I mean, we've sat here and discussed that till we're blue in the face, that, you know, this is, I mean, the cities get a lot of benefit of this too. Yes, the cities does do this. But at the same time, you know, if we overfund it, then I'm looked at as financially irresponsible of, you know, I'm giving money to the cities, and that's not what this is about. This is about growing a recreation program and starting a funding, showing what it's doing. And, I mean, to me, I think $91,000 changes recreation in Westminster. I think it changes it all over the place. I mean, the way I look at it is it's a step in the right direction. Again, it's not a fix. It's not a solution, but it's better than $10,500 or whatever you get right now, because the wheels are coming off at $10,000. And I get it. I mean, you get that 25,000, and it's like, can we get 25,000 every single year? So, I mean, so.
Well, I think the reason you're getting that is because it's never gonna be enough in small increments like that. I think if the county just owned up to, all right, how much are you cities paying for this? Let us pay our part, what services for our county. Our county tax is $572,000. So over a third of our city taxes go toward providing recreation for county residents. That's the battle I'm up against. And yeah, I know this is all at once jump, but I hadn't been mayor long enough to know this. This should have been done 15 years ago. Somebody should have stepped back and said, you know, if we're giving the school system $59 million and we're only giving recreation $52,000 and making the cities do the rest on their own, something needs to change there. A big change. And I know, I appreciate what you're doing, I do, but I want you to see the big picture of this, what it's doing to our city. Seneca, you look at their numbers, they're big enough, they can handle it. Walhalla, Salem, us, I mean, we're struggling with this.
I think it affects y'all the same. I mean, I know it's tough. I mean, the more kids you serve, the harder it is. Or, you know, I mean, the more kids you serve, the more volunteers it takes. I mean, so I'll let Rick, you want to go, or sorry, Herb, I'll give you a chance if you want to speak.
Yeah, 110,000 would go a long way for us. That would be about what we would be getting at $92. There's a lot I can do. Go back to the hosting of the tournaments and stuff that we put on. If we got more fields, we can host more tournaments. That's what brings money in, you know. Just like one World Series will bring in about $400,000 1,000 or so a week. Hosting tournaments when you have enough fields to do that. I mean, but, you know, having the extra money, you know, there's a lot we can do with that.
John?
I just had
Or
a
you- go
question,
ahead.
Mike, could you, is the cost per participant, is it pretty much the same in all the
No,
cities?
yeah,
No,
well, it is.
in the cities probably, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, the hours is
A
across
lot
the
less,
board.
I'm sure, for Pharaoh.
We don't,
It's- yeah,
we don't have payroll.
You don't have.
We don't have
That's a
payroll
whole-
and stuff, I mean, so
Yeah,
for us, it's,
they have the large expense.
it pretty
Currently,
much
the
evens out.
out-of-county fees pretty much the same, Central Ohio.
Yeah, it is, we raised ours last year to match the rest of them. And the number I'm giving you is after we're adding that fee in there. This is after they pay their fees, we're still paying out $280.09 is what it costs to play a sport in our town. I don't know what Walhalla's and Seneca is, but that's what it actually costs us, and that's not including capital
Per
projects,
student.
per participant,
sport?
per
Is that
participant.
including, that's including
Per
payroll
sport?
and everything?
That's
Man.
everything but capital. We're not including any capital expenses, that's just operations.
See, they're operations. We have no operations, we're all volunteer.
Yeah.
If we don't have no volunteers, we just don't offer it.
And the damage to us is the more participants we have, the less money per participant it costs us. Because we've got X amount of overhead, so the more people who play, the less per participant it costs us. But we have to cut a sport, we lose those participants for that sport, plus their friends who now are gonna go play somewhere else because we didn't provide what they wanted before. So they just keep bigger hit. Not an easy solution either way.
No.
Mark Lyles, when you gave the numbers a while ago, Mayor, with the number of kids, and you said like with 280 per participant,
280 on that.
is that utilities included in that?
That's all our operations expense, everything but capital costs.
And how much is your utilities?
Everybody can tell you that. I've just got the total budget number.
Because I was looking at Seneca's, the last time we met, it was $130,000. Wow. Lot.
How much
That's
a
what it
lot
takes.
is it?
I mean, especially, and people don't think about lights and gyms and air conditioners, they usually.
Yeah. Purchase order, $5,000 to play basketball. Think about 100 games. Not like high school where you have 2 games a week.
How much does a ref get for recreation ball?
Qualifications.
35 in the All-Star tournament.
Football's going up.
Football was $37.50 per game, now it's going up.
What was your utilities last year?
I don't know what the total was, I've just got the total number.
That Charles Morgan, that $5,000, is that for the entire basketball season, is it for playoffs?
That was my season,
For the season?
but I've already paid one official, so I really. I was paying one by the week.
John, I'll let you go right, you can go right ahead in the
I'm
water.
sorry, John Gower, as far as the money goes, I understand what you're saying, I understand what Brian's saying. Being in a similar situation, we'll be glad to get the money. But, you know, and I'm saying that because, the recreation's always at the bottom in any city, because we are not ones that don't provide the service that's needed as water and power and stuff like that. We're always the last to get anything we need, and maybe this will help. Some of that, like Rick was saying, it may prompt the city to go ahead and build us a soccer complex where we can start hosting some of these state things like. Bring people in the city, because I think that's the ticket to being able to get this money, is to show that we're using it in a positive way. I brought it one time before that, you know, this could happen, give the cities, and understand where Brian's coming from as far as the bottom, but a lot of times what happens is if we're getting 25,000 that year, they may short our budget 25,000 knowing that. So we're really not gaining anything. It's just a normal budget year for us, so, know how that'll, I see where we're coming from, but I hope it doesn't disappear in the clouds.
That, I think what you just mentioned is what the questions that I get, what's expected. And I think this is, when we sit here and talk about funding, anytime anything is funded for the first time, the expectations are high. And I think when you go back as a mayor, as a recreation director, as a volunteer, you understand where we're headed to this. This is a race, and it's a long one. And what I think we will show within the first 6 months of doing this, because, the funding, if it goes through, the funding would start in the was it June, I think is our, June, July, I don't know exactly when, it's one of those 2 months. July, thank you. Yeah. When y'all get this is when this funding would begin. And so, from a standpoint with your councils, whether you're, like I said, again, the mayor or over that, the plan of attack on how you're going to create this for the future. I mean, obviously, if we come through here and we meet next year and recreation looks the exact same, mud's on my face. It's not on y'all's, because here I am trying to propose this out. And, obviously we want more funding. This is important. This is more, I think this is one of the most important things this county's ever tried to tackle, because this is the future of what we're trying to solve. We're at this point because nobody paid any attention to it before. If 10 years ago, they'd have looked at this and go, hey, we're gonna try throwing $300,000 at this. No, it's been, well, we've got 15,000 in the budget, let's take that down to 10. And that's what's happened. And nobody's been around the table sitting at this. So, I understand the funding issues, and that's why I'm sitting here fighting for it, to understand from our citizen standpoint. I know the change that it'll have. Salem?
Travis Oliver, Salem. I see where Seneca, Westminster, and Walhalla come from, but in Salem's standpoint, we're nonprofit. What we take in, we put back to the kids. I think y'all are the same way. $94 a kid would be great, but I think, talking to some of the town council members and some of the other rec board members, we just need facilities, and that's a big ticket item. $94 a kid for about 80 to 90 kids ain't gonna get us anywhere to having our gym. I've sat here and said every time, we're lucky that the DAR allows us to use that gym, and the school district helps keep it up, and we use the old softball field behind the elementary school, and that's a blessing. It really is, because without that, we'd have nothing, So to show what are we gonna do in Salem, I think the biggest thing is, can we get a facility, just a gym, to offer whatever we can, when Salem closed, I think there was some speculation that that gym and that ball field up there around the school would be available, but then we know what happened with the charter school coming in. You don't have access to that in the fall, winter, and spring. It sits there in the summertime, but nobody does anything in the summertime. I have some ideas in my head that we could do something there, for the kids in the summer, to the point that the sheriff has brought up and said, hey, kids need to have something to do. And the summertime's one of the times where kids need to have something to do, because they're not in school. And the kids, parents are working. So if you can have some things to keep them involved. But our biggest thing is just lack of facilities. said, I know that's a lot of money just to, I guess in my mind, I see it as we just need whatever it costs to build a gym. Whereas y'all need what it costs to cover kids, cause y'all already got what you need. So our needs are different, it's.
Everybody sitting at this table needs a certain facility.
Yeah.
So don't think
Well,
that you're alone.
I know, but I guess
Yeah.
what I'm saying is we don't have anything to call our own. We're borrowing,
We make do with what we have.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean,
no, I
we
understand
could
that.
have more. I mean,
Yeah, no,
I
I
need,
get that.
I need gym too.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't even start volleyball.
But y'all's gym ain't 100 years old. You see what I'm saying? I mean, it'd be nice to have
Good shape too.
Yeah, I know, but we can't do any, that's not our gym to really make our own, That's the issue, is we don't have one to do that. And I don't know what the future has in store for the charter school, but we'll see.
David Polson, Town of Salem. I'll start off by saying that we wouldn't have a rec department if it wasn't for the county that helped us with the funding, because the money that we get, every nickel we get, it goes to the kids. And it'd just be interesting to see that if you pay on a per participant basis, what room does that leave small areas for developing bigger and better programs? Because if we're spending every dime we get on the participants that are playing, it doesn't leave anything for future development. Well, that would be my only question that I would want to work out in my head.
And I think what the goal of this is to help with the participant part of it. There are some other talks that we work on as we move forward with, what is, when y'all talk about soccer fields, or when y'all talk about, grading, there's certain things as a county that there, possibility depending on time-wise and certain funding. When you designate funding for possibility, I mean, this to me, when I try to look at the numbers, Salem's at 80, y'all are at, what is y'all's number?
Oh, it's going up this year.
I've got 122 added in spring.
Yeah. So what I try to look at is, with a half meal being 90, a meal from the county would be 176, 1.5 meal would be 264. So you see kind of my step plan and looking at this going, if this is where it's supposed to be, we're going in the right direction, is this something that our citizens really truly want us to invest in, and how to invest in it properly? If you come out the gate and say, hey, it's, we need $1.5 million, we're gonna be in the same boat we are next year. And they're gonna look at me going, you're trying to fund something that's unfundable because of the budget concerns and where we're at. So that's kind of what I want to remind, I mean, as we are, the goal of this is to kind of look and, like you said, you got your smaller entities, there's, a possibility there. I'm not sure if $92 is enough per kid to really truly make a difference. That's kind of where I'm at today, sitting here going, what does that look like? You're talking about $90,000 for the big. What does, as a smaller group, what does that look like? As in building facilities, I don't see that occurring because of the cost associated with it, unless we have some magical money kind of hanging out there. And that's the tough part about this, is when you're in here as a city, designated funding, unfortunately can go away depending on who's sitting up in those seats up there. And if programs like this don't work out, then you won't see me sitting in that seat up there. My hope is that we all work together, and your councils work together to see what we're trying to accomplish on there. So if we're looking at that, I don't have an issue. If obviously a half meal is not even feasible to work, maybe we need to look at, at least 3/4 of a meal to see what that would go. Yeah, one. So,
Well,
the ask is fine.
But if we get some money from the county, we've got to make sure that it shows in the rec department. If it doesn't show in the rec department, we can't have this meeting again and ask for more money. He's looking at baby steps, but we have to make the first step count. Make it show where I mean, this is people all in the county's paying for this, you know? So they need to see a difference in the rec department, you know? Maybe you got, you know, new bats and you got, you know, but it's better. But we need to show that it's better to go to the next step, to get more money. That's the way I'm looking at this.
And I still, you know, what I'm trying to look at from a budgeting standpoint is what we can afford as it is. I think the meal is the appropriate ask of council, but I don't sit around here and want to make false hopes with anybody sitting at this table. And that's why I'm honest to sit here and say, you know, this is what I think. I have no issue asking if a meal is, you know, if you sit here and go, I know we can make a difference at this. This is how I do it. This is what I take back to council and state what that is. Because if we're looking at the total cost for providing recreation is, if we're at $289 a participant, at 3,000 participants, $867,000. So if you're looking at something like that and you're throwing $528,000, which is the cost of a meal in Oconee County in there, dividing that among the 3,000 is the $176 a kid. So it sounds to me, and for a smaller group, not doing that in my head, 14,080 per year. That's the hardest one is, you know, how do you make it fair for your, what are y'all, 135 kids?
We're actually 250 now, including spring, this spring.
If we keep cutting our programs, you're gonna get higher.
44,000.
And I don't want you to
So
cut.
it'd be 44,000 a year.
Is that on top of what they're already giving? Or are you talking about, that's the new?
How much
But you
did
can,
say?
I do appreciate what you're saying, and what I've heard from everybody at this table, and here's the difference, I wish every other mayor and council member would show up here. Most of these people in here are dealing with their recreation department. I see the whole budget, how it affects the whole town. I'm hearing from you and everybody in here. Our kids are the most important asset we have. We need to invest in our kids. I've heard it. But then I hear, but we can't afford it. From the county council. Something has got to change other than just, let's give them a little more money. Let's keep giving them a little more money. They're not gonna turn down money. Let's give them a little bit, give them a little. No, the whole system's gotta change because if we don't invest in these kids now, as Mike said, and what we all see going on across the country right now, you're either gonna have to make the kids a priority and give them money for it, or we're gonna have to start cutting because the cities cannot afford to do it. Walhalla, I don't know where they're at, but I know where we're at. And 1/3 of our budget going for this, just the out of county, just the out of city. And my residents don't wanna do this. They want senior activities, and I can't afford to give it to them because we're having to foot that bill. Well, this is kids. I'm not gonna tell kids no. When our city cut the budget last year, Herb will tell you, I was the only one. No, sir, we're not going with that budget because I don't want to cut any service because they will go to Fair Oak, which is exactly what happened. Now, she needs more money, so you're gonna have to pay it somewhere. Or volunteers are eventually just gonna run out. So I don't know how you're gonna get the county council to see this. But it's bigger than just, let's put a little more money to it and maybe get everybody to settle down. Something's gonna have to get bigger. Somebody's gonna have to change priorities in the county if they really mean that these kids are that important.
Mhm. Okay. I mean, if somebody wants to make a motion, I'm fine to ask for a meal.
Can I ask a question?
You sure can.
It was about 9 or 10 years ago, it brought up at county council about the YMCA coming in. Would that be an option? I might not like to hear that,
It
but
is an option. It already is.
That's going now.
It's
Yep.
fixing to be built.
How will that change recreation in the cities, do we know?
It won't hurt.
It won't.
I mean, they do a lot of school program, after school programs, summer programs, and we're all willing to give them that.
It might take a little load off of us, probably take more off of Seneca,
Little,
but I don't think it's gonna be a huge difference. A lot of our kids are gonna be swimming there that normally if we play in a sport here, they might go down and do a swim team instead of volleyball or softball or something, but other than that, I don't think it'll be a big.
Mark,
big
answer your question, I'm on the Y board.
Yes, sir.
Right now, phase one does not include a gym and the facility, the fields are not available. But it's already been decided that as far as recreation, we're gonna offer things that recreation departments do not offer.
Okay.
Such
Where-
as,
where
I
would that be
think Rick's
located?
already said that, you know, the 3 to 4 and 5-year-old soccer, they don't wanna deal with that. So they go to the Y and say, hey, we'll take it over,
they did 2-year-old soccer.
okay? So,
I mean,
but it's
I
gonna
mean,
be
and that's
reality.
Squirrel.
It's gonna
It's a
be
baby
reality.
race.
I'm so proud for
Couple
them.
years down the road.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and I think the other thing is, once you start, you know, there's been no talk of funding with them on that through the county, so countywide of things, or what the offering is or isn't on that. And until there is actually a structure and a program going from that standpoint, you know, that's kind of why we don't really have them here at the table. It's nothing, I don't have any problems with them because I talk to them. But I think that is a viable option. What that looks like, when it is going, and how that, it can't do anything but add. I mean, as their program right now states, they're doing it without funding on there. So, I mean, you know, from a standpoint of what that looks like 3 years down the road, may be another interest. I mean, you only have so many kids in the county, and that's kind of what we look at as well. I don't see, because there is now county funding, yeah, there may be some lower fees associated with that. But, you know, somebody asked me, okay, does that mean the county recreation is gonna be free? I think that doesn't work that way. Like, reduced, yes. I mean, that is the hope, but unfortunately, there's nothing free in life, and that's what we, work on. I know from a sponsorship level, I think to have, your sponsorships go more towards your player fees, is helpful. I know a lot of y'all do that now. I mean, that's obviously the goal of that. I think when we look at this, when you're encouraging recreation, it's also going to get your businesses back involved in recreation as well. I mean, I think that's the goal of this, is to keep, your sponsorship levels rising, keep your businesses engaged in it. I mean, we're planning on putting more people in this county, not only that are coming in here for tourism, maybe they come in here and they, for, these games that you have. Adult softball tournaments are a big thing. I mean, yeah, I think, we want more facilities in Oconee County. The ability to fund that, man, that's a whole nother thing, on here. It is, I asked, Mr. Mulder a question the other day. I said, man, how did all this stuff get built? I mean, how did you build? I mean, just think about it. I mean, some of it's schools, some of it's older schools that we use. But I mean, how did that stuff get built? You can't, it's hard to even dream about building, a $2 or $4 million structure right now. And the hope with this is that, your council gets behind you, and this encourages them to fund these things, and they see the light at the end of a tunnel. Did you have anything that you wanted to add to that? Okay. We talked last time a little bit about, all-star funding and everything with that, which I still think that's an important part of that. So it doesn't cause an issue on the budgets for that. We had talked about, there was a little misquote that I kind of talked about to the Journal about the $25,000. That's not $25,000 per team. That's a budgeted amount per year that would be, depending on whatever that amount would be divided among whatever teams on there. I still encourage each of you, those teams that do sponsorships and fundraise for their all-star teams, just because you're getting a funding level for that, I encourage them to do that, because it's oftentimes to get communities together for that. So that would be a secondary request that we would make on top of there, which would be $25,000 a year in a budget. So the way that that would work is, as you submit a claim for, we're traveling to Sumter for a tournament, here would be the claim form, and it would have it'd have the person, what the numbers of that would be, and here's the request on that. Depending on as we move down, we would go up to that $25,000. So what we're trying to look at is we tried to look at the last 3 years of what that All-Star looked like through there, and we do feel like 25,000 would get 75% of that. Our hope would be, as that rolls through, you may have a heavy year, you may have a light year in that would suffice. I know it's not, I hope that every single one of our all-star team makes it, but, usually, obviously we're against each other at the end of it. So from each sport, you would in tune maybe have 2 or 3 teams go, but, as what I have seen go from a state level, it has been below that. So that would be the second request that we would make on there. And we briefly talked about that, and due to time, and we won't, beat that in the ground. We've talked about establish the funding level today along with the out of city. And I think the smartest thing here is to include it as per person, not inner city, out of city. Let's don't even cross that bridge. It's too hard to keep up with. Per participant is, to me, the best way to go here. That way you don't have to keep, y'all can keep track of it for your own ways, as I know that you do. But at the same time, the per participant is the way that I feel like we should go here. And that kind of brings us into the formation. So what I would suggest is what I'm hearing here. We would need a motion for this, but the recommendation to council for the funding of 2018 and 2019 would be a meal divided among the total number of participants as audited to here. In other words, you would just submit a form stating, here's what my number is, and this would be from your prior year, obviously. And that would be divided among whatever that would be. There would also, and the $25,000 All-Star per year, that would be, for whatever your expenditures are, you would supply those back into here. One thing that I would ask, so that could be one motion. So would somebody like to make that motion? All right, Mr. Rick Lacy makes that motion. Get a second. Terry Swain makes a second. Any discussion on that?
What's the total cost for Walhalla and Seneca? Did they turn that in per participant? What's their cost per participant?
I think it was in the 250 to 300 range.
So we're all 3 cities in about the same amount of cost.
My formula was 289 by 3,000, which came up with 867. So, because it was kind of a middle of the road, because I was kind of trying to figure out is if these areas continue to grow where they're funding that area, because more money to me means more opportunities. And what we're trying to work on here, if you've watched the county millage has grown, and hopefully it continues to grow, but obviously hopefully this program grows. So any other discussion on that? Yes, sir. Mike Crenshaw.
I can just, from a parent, from a citizen perspective, last, with the county is putting this much money in one meal in the recreation. We'll see fees go down in out of city.
Yeah, wait a minute.
And Rick talked about, showing a difference. So where is that the citizen gonna see that difference in your rec department?
I can speak for Westminster, I can't speak for Walhalla and Seneca. But for Westminster, unless we get what we're paying out right now, break even, nothing's gonna change in Westminster. We need when I go to my council, we're going to budget meeting at 6 o'clock. When I go in there and tell them, guys, we're not gonna get our $200,000 this year, we're gonna have to look at cuts again. Because we can't continue funding what we've been doing. And I don't know that's the reason I wish the mayors or council members were here that knew what their budget, overall budgets are. But it's gonna help us. You got a thirsty man, you tell him you want 2 drops of water, he's gonna take it. He needs a gallon, but he's gonna take whatever you give him. So we're thankful for what we get, but that's the reason I say to change this, the county's gonna have to start putting these kids priority.
So if it's 200,000, the county gives you 90,
We're still 110 short.
You're still 110.
We're still 110. We're
So
gonna
you're saying you're
bring
gonna have to cut complete 200,000 out?
No, we'll do what we did last year. We'll start nitpicking everything and trying to figure out what we can, what we're gonna get the most growth hack about, and that's all we can do.
Do the cities know how much it's costing them per player for just sport? Like, take out utilities, take out salaries, like, do you know how much it costs you per player to pay for the refs, the uniforms, that type of thing?
The problem with that is our gym, the gym's gonna be open for any sport, indoor baseball practice, indoor football when it's raining, basketball.
I understand,
So
I'm
if
just
you take
saying,
one of those out, you still got some costs for these others. So
I'm just
we can't-
wondering if it's kind of breaking even like us, like ours breaks even. Like, so for every sport, what we bring in, including the sponsor for the back of the jersey, usually helps, which pays for our jerseys. The $60 or whatever, $60 we're charging, $65, will pay for the rest for the 10 games when we divide it among all 10 players or more. And it pays for the uniforms, sponsors, it all kind of breaks even, so I just didn't know if it's the same way for every other, or that stuff's costing y'all more than it's costing us. That's what I'm asking, I don't know the
I'd say
answer.
it's all about the same.
So that
As far
should
as
be
that
about the
goes.
same.
But when you talk about cutting everything out, you gotta remember, when y'all participate, and I'm not talking bad about you by no means, but we do all the work. All the scheduling, we do all the paperwork and everything, and that's a lot.
Yeah, but that can be something that can be changed though, right? Like, that can be, hey, well, y'all handle the soccer schedule, this group will handle the baseball, and that can be thrown in where Pharaoh can be thrown into that, right? That could be something that could help them, where Pharaoh can say, all right, we're
I
gonna.
don't think they wanna do it as a volunteer, I wouldn't.
I mean, it's a lot of time. I mean, it's a ton of time just to,
It takes me about 2 weeks to do
Yeah.
the county schedule. 8 hours a day for 2.
Miss Terry, you had how many participants? 100 and what?
122 in the spring,
122?
this spring, just
And
this
all
this
that's
spring.
done with volunteers.
All,
all of it.
And we've got 958, and we've gotta pay Herb.
oh
to
yeah,
maintain the
I'm just
field,
wondering if the
part-timers.
numbers, the other parts, I understand the other costs, I'm just wondering if
and
that,
I'm sure the sports
If it's
are
all
all
about
the
the same.
same, but the more numbers that you have, the more it costs.
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
you have
Oh,
to
yeah,
have
from the
more
outside,
games, we
yeah.
have to have more games, that's more referees, more umpires.
Mhm.
I mean, and that's where your cost really comes in, when you have so many more games, then, I mean, if we play in-house, we're having to cover all that. You see what I'm saying? I mean, it's.
Or your
more-
utility costs
It
will go
seemed
up,
like
too.
it would be less,
No.
but it's just like we do adult softball. You know, we cut it off like at 12, sometimes we'll have 14 teams. But if we had 16 teams, they'd be paying $600 apiece to play in the tournament. I mean, to play in the league, because that's how much more umpiring it takes.
Right.
I mean, it's not because you have more is good, more costs more.
Let me bring us back real quick and we'll close out on that motion. So, I have a motion by Rick Lacy to recommend to the county to fund 1 meal, per all, divided among, per participant, whatever the value of that meal is, as submitted per each, entity here. I'll call it that since we have, cities and other recreation. And I had a second. It was a second by Terry Swain. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Raise our hand, a little bit easier. Everybody?
Yep.
Perfect.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
None opposed? Okay. So what I would do, based on the recommendation that we have, is to take that back to your council board. Again, this is a recommendation. It's no more than that. My report to this, it will not be tonight, it'll be in March, when I'll make this recommendation to there as we move through our, season. It'd be March the 6th is that, council meeting that we would do. I think, go ahead.
Can I ask one question?
Yes, please.
And correct me if I'm wrong, I just want to make sure I'm on the right page. But under this plan, by doing it per participant, the smaller agencies like us will actually lose funding
Not at,
At a half a mil, we would.
at a
at
half a
half
mil.
mil you would, yes. The goal, yeah, the goal at a half mil would not be for you to lose funding.
Okay.
We would stop at
That's what
you
I was
are
figuring
right
under
now.
the half
Yes,
mil.
yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. It would not be less funding, no. Whatever your funding would be, what our thought would be is as you continue to grow and as we move forward. That's kind of why the half mil was kind of one of those things, but it wouldn't change whatever your amount would be.
I just wanted to
what
make
it
sure
would
I
be.
was.
Yes. Yeah,
You, can I ask you a question?
yes, sir.
Is any of this money gonna go to any other recreation, as far as the parks, recreation, anything in the county? This is all straight for the cities for recreation fund?
This recommendation is strictly for the recommendation of funding for the recreation you have right here.
Now, second part of the question, have y'all considered a hospitality tax?
We
To
have,
help pay for the capital projects that we all need, the gyms, the ball fields, and the parks.
we have, yeah. You know, over here, I hear it now. Now, hospitality tax has, come up and been talked about. That's as far as it's gone.
What else do you recommend with this right here that the cities do to cover their costs?
Well, I think the first thing is to look at, what this would be and what your ability to continue to do, for this. If you're, you know, from Westminster standpoint, if we're looking at, so yours was
Total,
900 and how
total
many
for
people?
this was 958.
$168,000,
If it passes.
if it passes.
And when do you anticipate that funding would start then?
July.
July.
Yep. So that's, you know, my question for those that, you know, have a council or board, what does that funding opportunity look like in there? The next meeting's April 17th. If that works for everyone. That would give us the month of March for you to speak with your, council. Kind of talk about what that would be. I mean, we all know it's very easy to look at your council as what recreation is right now without funding. That's the simple. And then as this plans, I mean, if it did pass, you would need to be planning now for implementing that change coming into the fall. I mean, it's a good time because you can really focus through on the, summertime. I don't think anybody here offers much during the summer. But and go from there. Is there any other business or anything to discuss on there?
So, but I want to thank all y'all for coming, because this is really important, and us getting together and doing this. Thank you for putting it together. But, I mean, we really, the rest of the county understand how important this is, especially now. And Mike Crenshaw, I mean, what you guys are doing, y'all let people see that makes a big difference.
Okay. All right, get a motion to adjourn.
Motion.